pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, will the commission secretary note the roll that all are here and we have a vacancy, I understand. Next order of business is the election of officers. As we do every year, we get to decide who gets to sit in this chair and lead the fun. I will certainly open the discussion to take nominations for chair. Feel free to talk amongst yourselves.
Mr. Chairman, I nominate you for a chair. Can I do them both at the same time, or do I have to do them individually? Okay. I nominate Chairman Locks as chairman.
All right. Is there any other nominations on the floor? Okay.
I move we close the nominations for chairman.
I second.
All right. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Apparently I'm going to stay.
Is that why you wore a tie tonight?
No, for other reasons I wear a tie. Unrelated to commission business. All right. I will open the discussion for vice chair nominees.
I'll nominate Commissioner Schlosser for vice chairman.
Second.
All right. Well, you've got a motion and second for Vice Chair Schlosser to continue. Any other nominees?
I make a motion we close nominations.
Second it.
Right. So ordered. All those in favor of retaining Commissioner Schlosser, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So ordered. All right. I will take a motion for the minutes from the last.
Move to approve the
Commission
minutes from last meeting.
Seems so long ago. Got a motion from Commissioner Peters to approve the minutes from October 19th,
Second.
and a second from Commissioner Short. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All right. So ordered. All right. Public comments. Is there anyone from a member of the public wish to speak to anything that is not on our agenda this evening? Now's your chance. Okay, moving along. Disclosure of ex parte communication.
None.
None.
None from me either. Okay, no old business. And now I will. Do I need to take us into work session, or does it? We can just move and say, Katie, take it away.
Thank you, Chairman Locks and members of the Commission. I'm pleased to be before you tonight to go over the General Plan Update project with you. Because this is a significant project, staff just wanted to formally introduce it to you, and we wanted to go over our thoughts on the approach of tackling this project and get any comments, questions you have at this time. There's also a second part to this presentation. One of the first steps of the project is we have to adopt a public participation plan. So staff would like to go over just our ideas of what we can do for public participation. And again, we'd love to hear any ideas you have. Maybe you know another city that's done something. Maybe you're concerned that there's a sector of the population we're not getting involved enough, and you can just direct us to think of ways to get that sector in. And then we're going to do the same in front of City Council, and then we will go back, draft the plan, and bring that back to you probably in March for formal adoption. And if it pleases the chair, because this is work session, I do encourage you to ask questions as we go along through the presentation and make any comments you might have. Okay, because this is the first introductory session to the general plan update, I do want to start with the basics. Basically, the reason we have a general plan is that state statute requires all municipalities in Arizona to have a general plan. A general plan is often called a roadmap or a blueprint for growth and development, but I also don't want us to get hung up on the idea that it's only about building new buildings on vacant properties. That's why I like to think about the general plan as guiding change. Even cities that are built out will still have a general plan. Planning never ends. And so what it does is just kind of sets the basis and policy and vision for how we foresee Goodyear growing and developing in the future. And I do just want to make the point, too, that even though it's kind of a visioning book and goal-oriented book, it's not something that sits on the shelf and collects dust. Staff uses this all the time, and I kind of have my copy as proof. It's torn apart. It's got all sorts of marked pages. I pick it up all the time. When you might often see that when we write our recommendations to Planning and Zoning Commission, we'll say something is in conformance with the general plan. We look to the general plan for guidance to make our recommendation to you when we get a new zoning case or a new development case. So it's a very important document. It's used day to day in the Planning and Zoning Office. The reason we're doing an update is that state statute also requires that you update the general plan every 10 years. This general plan was adopted in November 2003, so normally it would expire in 2013. However, because updating the general plan is such a significant cost, and in recognition of the recent economic times, the state legislature did extend the deadline till July 2015, so they gave us a couple extra years to get the general plan update completed. Goodyear also has a special case in that the last time we did the general plan, we had a population under 50,000, so there was only certain requirements for smaller cities. Now that we've exceeded that population, we're now 67,000 in population, there's several more requirements, and so it significantly changes the general plan. And I will get into that in a little bit more detail. So even besides the 10-year deadline, it's time to update the general plan because the official census population has confirmed our population growth. But even more than that, than the requirements, a general plan update is a really great opportunity. Our population was 33,000 in 2003, and now it's roughly 67,000. So at least half our residents weren't here the last time we updated our general plan. All of you who've been here in 2003 since then have probably seen a lot of changes in Goodyear. We've included the Sonoran Valley area. We went through one of the fastest growing periods in our history, and then, of course, right after that hit one of our slowest growth times in history, and we've learned a lot, and the city has changed a lot. So it's a really great opportunity to update the plan now, incorporate those lessons learned, get all of our citizenry involved into the plan, and move forward with a new plan because we know there'll be another growth spurt, there'll be another sluggish downturn again in the future. We'll see it all again. So the general plan is based on Growing Smarter Plus legislation, which was adopted in 2000. And they created 6 smart growth guiding principles, which I didn't include here, but that's in the state statute. They also recommend that your general plan be based on a vision statement. It should include a statement of goals and development policies. It should include plans. And up on the screen you can see is the land use map, and as you know, that's probably one of the more used portions of the general plan and one that more people are familiar with than the text of the general plan. And then something unique to the general plan is that ratification is required. So after council adopts the plan, it then goes to the voters of Goodyear for ratification in the general election. Something else unique to the general plan is that it covers the municipal planning area. All cities in Maricopa County have a municipal planning area which extends beyond the city limits, and that's the area for which we're responsible for long-range planning. And you can see here that our municipal planning area is 247 square miles compared to our city, which is only 191 square miles. And our population in the municipal planning area is approximately 71,000 as of the 2010 census, whereas at the 2010 census, the city population was around 65,000. So it's important to note that that means there's 6,000 people who are not Goodyear residents living in these county areas that are going to be affected by the general plan, but they don't normally get involved in the city government because they're county residents. And so that's another challenge of getting them involved in this general plan update.
Mr. Chairman, do those folks vote on the general plan as well, or just the Goodyear residents?
Thank you. Just the Goodyear residents vote. So there is a little bit of a disconnect there. Yeah. As I said, when you grow your city size, there's different required elements for the general plan. Back in 2003, there was only 7 required elements, which you can see up here. That was required for a city under 50,000 in population. The city did decide to add 2 that's required of larger cities, the housing and public services. However, now we have 17 required elements, which you can all see. And you can see that a lot of them do relate to each other. They're not necessarily each unique element. We also may want to consider adding additional elements that aren't required. Community character was a portion of the original general plan that we have now. And economic development is not required, but it seems really difficult these days to talk about development and growth without talking about economic development.
Do things like park system, trail system, do that come under recreation, or is that another category?
Thank you. It does come under recreation, and it kind of comes under, I think, public services as well. But parks is required. I can't remember exactly what portions it's covered under the state legislature.
I thought as if it was part of the open space,
Oh, okay.
as I recall.
You're probably right. Thank you. Okay, so basically you can see that we almost have twice as many elements to take care of this time, so we've got a lot more to add into the plan. It doesn't mean we're going to throw out what's in the plan now. We are going to relook at it as we open up the plan, and people will comment on it, and we may be revising things as we see that some of these new elements relate to the older elements, but we do have a really good base. The current plan has been working for us really well, so we have a good start to work with.
Mr. Chairman, on that plan, is it, since it's required every 10 years, is it really 10-year focused and then everything else is kind of into the future, or is it, we're looking at 10 years and how it's going to build into the 10 years after that? How much is conceptualized on the, of what's going to happen over the course of the next 50 years?
Thank you. That's a great question. I think the focus is 10 years, but so many of the policies and goals in there are kind of broad. They're goals that we want to have for the future of Goodyear, such as, there's goals in there about having a good mix of residential land uses. And I would suspect that's something we want to have over the next 50 years, next 100 years. But when you start narrowing it down, getting into the implementation program, that definitely just has like a 10-year cutoff. So it kind of, as you narrow the focus in some of the chapters, it narrows the timeline. But I think as we go forward, though, we will want to kind of keep in mind our vision for Goodyear 50 years from now, 100 years from now, but we might want to be creating policies that we know will, what do we need to do in the next 10 years to get us to that vision 50 years from now, if that makes sense.
Right, and some elements, aren't going to happen in 10 years, and yet they still deserve, discussion. I know that there was extensive discussion about circulation, especially freeways that may or may not happen, and so you have to integrate the possibility of those, because as everybody knows, rights of way and all of that stuff is difficult to reacquire later, and so it's better to plan for the future. So, yes, so there were elements, that I know that we discussed during that were beyond the 10-year period, but again, maintaining the focus. So I think you get a little mix of both.
That's a great point.
How do we incorporate things that involve partnerships between Goodyear and other cities, such as bus routes, mass transit, light rail connections? How do we deal with those kinds of things that we can't do as a separate city, but still would want to have a voice in?
That's a fantastic question, and I'm
You
going to
paid
hold
me,
off.
right?
No, it's a great question, and that's part of what the focus of the public participation plan is supposed to be, is answering those questions. How are we going to involve the other cities? How are we going to involve, if we're going to talk about the 303, you know, how are we going to make sure we're talking to ADOT about that and talking to Glendale, who probably, in Surprise, who want to know where it's going to, and even, you know, Pinal County. And so I am going to hold off on that. I'm going to mark it, and then I think it's best for discussion in kind of the second part of the presentation and how we work with the other communities. Is that fair?
That's
Okay.
great, thank you.
Okay. So just looking at the timeline, right now we're kind of in what I'd call phase one, and this, you know, January 2012, this is the very, very beginning of the project. And so right now we're just getting prepared, gathering information. As I said, the adoption of the public participation plan is one of our first things to tackle. Something else that's going on right now is we are working on creating an existing conditions report. And basically what that is that's gathering all those facts that don't necessarily require public input, because our topography is what our topography is, and some of those information, and putting that together in a book. And we are very, very fortunate. We were able to form a partnership with ASU. A graduate level planning studio at ASU is working on our existing condition report with us. Joe Schmitz and I met with them last week, and they seem like a really great group of students. We're very, very lucky. We're really excited to work with them. They're really excited to get working on the project. And they anticipate to have that completed in April, and they're going to come back to this group and present their findings of the existing conditions report. And we expect them to have, like I said, some of the basic information, but we're hoping they're also going to be able to give us a little bit of analysis, such as, you know, is our residential mix right for the type of city we want to become? You know, what about our jobs to housing ratio? What are the other cities doing? Is it good? You know, some of that stuff, so that then when we start the public process, we have that good base information to share with the public. So we're hoping then, with doing all that right now, we're ready to basically launch publicly this fall, September 2012. And I am going to get more into this public participation part in the next portion, but we are thinking that there would be some sort of committee, and we would start off with a lot of public participation, citywide open houses, town hall type meetings, and we would start off basically just visioning and broad goal setting. You know, where do we want to be 50 years from now, kind of what we talked about. What are these broad goals that we want Goodyear to be? What kind of city is Goodyear going to be? And then from there, in January 2013, that's when we hope we can actually start crafting the plan and turning those goals in. What are the policies and the objectives we need to have in place so that we can achieve that vision? And in that part, we're just kind of cranking out, getting the technical text done. We're going to be working on the land use plan at that time. And our goal is to have a draft plan in place in the fall of 2013. And then we would move on to basically the review, taking it out to the public to review an actual draft complete plan. And we'd hope that that would be wrapping up in January 2014, and that's when we would be coming back here into council with work sessions. There's required public hearings, and then we're hoping that summer 2014 is when council is able to adopt the plan. There's then a 120-day waiting period before you can take it to ratification, and we're shooting for November 2014 as our ratification date. That's an already scheduled federal election, and it's going to save us a lot in ratification costs if we can go on an already scheduled election rather than going on a special election. It's also nice because we have an already scheduled city election in March 2015, so we've kind of got that date as a backup date in case something happens with the process, and then we'll meet the July 2015 deadline. Oops. And then we'll go on to implementing the plan, and public participation in those items and implementation will be decided as we create the plan. So basically, as I said, the next steps, we're going to adopt the public participation plan. We're going to discuss that in just a moment, and we are currently working on the existing conditions report, which we hope to bring back to you in April. So I'm just going to stop here before I get on to the next part and ask what other questions you might have, comments, concerns.
Mr. Chairman, who is the driver, the facilitator? Like, who is the main kind of body that's keeping all the 65,000 opinions, focused on, a central kind of theme? Is it a consultant that's asking questions and incorporating those, and then the council is kind of putting together kind of where they want to go, or the P&Z, or I know you have the general plan committee. Are they the main body? There's a bunch of different levels. I'm trying to see who the main.
That's a great question. Thank you. I should start by saying that, yeah, last time we did the general plan, we did have a consultant who did kind of lead the process for us. Most cities at that time did it by consultant. This round of general plans, most cities' general plans kind of expire around the same time. They were all created around the same time. So many other cities, you might see it in the paper, working on their general plans right now too. And the trend now, because of the economic times, seems to be trying to do your general plan in-house. What our staff has done is we've kind of looked through everything we need to do to get this general plan completed, and we're trying to take more of a hybrid approach. We see that we would call this a plan that's going to be completed in-house. Joe Schmitz, Harvey, and I are kind of the team. We're going to be overseeing it, organizing everything, but there are maybe a certain few areas where it would be helpful to bring in a consultant. For example, maybe meeting facilitation. It'd be nice to have a third-party expert facilitator who can keep us on track at our public meetings. There might also be times where we need a little help with GIS and real technical items. So we might bring those in for help. The committee that we would recommend, and I can get to this again, I'll get in more detail in the public participation. They'll definitely be making more decisions regarding policy, like this is the policy we would recommend you put in the plan, but staff is going to be organizing, we need to do this today to keep on track, and, we got these comments from this public meeting and we organized them, and we're making sure that the committee talks about those comments. So the staff is doing the organizing, the actual writing of the plan. We're going to be keeping the website up to date, but the committee will be kind of advising staff on, this is what you should put in the plan, this is what you should take out of the plan. Does that make sense?
It does, and I appreciate the concern given to taxpayers and saving money and being innovative in that respect. But let's say that the economy. We're not saying it's going to turn around next year, but projects are starting to come online. Is there adequate staff to take on this project and keep it, the continuity of the project over the next 3 or 4 years, 3 years, I guess?
Would you like to answer that, Jeff?
I don't know if that's an appropriate question for you to ask.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Peters, obviously we're committed to the project. Once we start, we're going to be committed to it and dedicate the resources necessary. At this point in time, I anticipate we could handle an increase in workload of development activity fairly comfortably. And if the challenge is we need more staff to address that, then that's probably where we would go to find more staff.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that you're not capable. I was just thinking of the continuity, if at a later point a more full-time consultant needs to be hired, is there a lot of catch-up period that needs to take place and all that?
No, I appreciate that comment. That, it could be a problem. So I'm intending to stay committed to the project for the next 3 years. How about you, Harvey? We and our doctors will stay committed to the project.
Any other questions, comments?
I have a question. So, reading the document that I have, it says that there's going to be an ad hoc committee is that correct?
That's what staff's recommending.
That it would be from the community?
Yes.
Okay, and so I assume that they would be given, in order to move forward, you have to know where you've come from. I was not here. In fact, I guess 50% of the people who live in Goodyear were not here when this was developed. So it really would be I would be interested, well, I do have it, and I haven't read it all, but for them to get an understanding of where we were, what we've accomplished, because that's very important, what's been accomplished, and then moving on from there. And I just hope that in your committee that it's done at a time where it's not heavily laden with retirees, of which I am one of them, but that you get a few more younger people.
And I will say that I was younger in 2002. And I'm still not retired. And I participated and I was on the committee. So, and so there were other, young people at that time. Not many, but there were a few. So, I mean, it was a widely diverse issue, and I was going to wait until we got to that part to really, sort of talk about, what you guys envision this time versus last time, and, perhaps share some anecdotes or invite Gary to share some anecdotes that he recalls from back then. So.
Yeah, I think you have a unique perspective.
And to Commissioner Miller's first point, I would actually be interested in hearing, a summary of where we're at right now with the general plan and where we've kind of veered away and need to, kind of bring that back, and how we can avoid veering away. It's hard to predict the next 10 years, and so we've had instances where, okay, it doesn't quite fit, but let's capture that, let's recognize that happened over the last 10 years and try to capture that in the next 10 years, if that tracks.
That sounds good. I'm kind of hearing, besides the existing conditions report, you're kind of looking at kind of what did we do really good with this general plan and worked for us, and maybe what areas did we not do so good, so we can make sure that this time we come up with contingency plans. And okay, that's great. Thank you. Okay, well then I will move on to the public participation portion. If I can have PowerPoint back. Thanks. Oh no. Oh wait, no. I was lost. Sorry. So as I said, we are required to adopt a public participation plan, and I pulled the little language right there. I won't read it to you from the statute. I think the key words in there, though, are effective, early, and continuous. And so as we kind of tried to come up with ideas, we really thought of that, how we can make sure that the participation is effective, early, and continuous. Something really important to note is that when we put something in the plan, we're committed to what's in the plan. We can always do more, but we have to do what's in the plan. So we do want to create a good balance of making a strong commitment to our residents that we promise to provide them with good participation opportunities, but we also don't want to overcommit ourselves so that we get in a bind later on. This is a list of our stakeholders. The point of this isn't to tell you all of our stakeholders, but just to demonstrate, as you can see just by looking at this, there are a lot of groups, a lot of individuals that we have to get involved in this plan. I know we often focus on our residents, which our residents may be our most important stakeholders, but the general plan is quite unique that there are a lot of people to get in here. And so, I mean, this is exactly why we're required to have a plan, because there's so many organizations that have to get involved in the plan. As we created the plan, too, we wanted to think of why are we doing this? What's the point of the public participation? So we came up with some objectives. The first being that we want the community to hold ownership of this plan. They're going to be the ones adopting it. It doesn't end with council like normal plans do. And so we want to make sure that they feel it's their plan, and a good way to do that is through public participation. We want to make sure we have representation from the entire community. I think that's what Commissioner Miller was getting at. We want to, sometimes we get representation from the people who are really interested and want to get involved, but we want to make sure we think of ways to get even people who only have 5 minutes to participate, give them an opportunity to spend those 5 minutes participating. This is also a good opportunity to educate the public about what the general plan is and how it affects them. I think all of us who've sat in a rezoning case have heard before a resident come up saying, my realtor told me the land next to me was going to be this. And we say, well, the general plan said this. And they're like, what's a general plan? And that just hurts my heart because they don't know what a general plan is. And so this is a great time for us to tell people what a general plan is and why it affects them, why they should get involved. And then, of course, it's another good way to build and strengthen our relationships with our business community, with our residents, with our neighboring communities, and all those organizations. It's a great time for us to work together on something. We also want to make a commitment. We want to make sure that it's meaningful and interactive involvement. We just don't want to say, here's a draft of the plan, you tell us what you think. We want to think of ways that engage people and make them interested in participating. As was required, we want to make sure it's early and continuous, that people always have an opportunity to get involved, even if they're just finding out about the plan. We want to make sure there's equal opportunities. You're not going to have a computer. You don't have to have a car. There's lots of ways to participate. And we also want to make sure the results are made available to the public. Sometimes people comment and they just don't know what happens to that comment, and we're going to make sure that we do provide an answer to that comment. What happened to it? How did we respond to that comment? And so let's start with what's required. As I said, we're required to adopt the plan. When we have a draft plan, we're required to have a 60-day review period, and that's when we have to give the plan to certain stakeholders like Luke Air Force Base and the school districts and Arizona State Land Department for review. We're required to have 2 public hearings before this body, and we're required to have 1 public hearing at City Council, and as I've said, we're required to take it to the voters for election. So that's what we have to do. That's our baseline. What I want to do is kind of go through each phase of the project and tell you what we're kind of thinking each phase. So right now we're in preparation and information gathering, and it kind of starts tonight. We're doing this in a public forum so that you, as representatives of the community, can tell us what you think about our ideas for public participation. Soon, over the next few months, we hope to launch a project website so we can start getting information about the project out there. And we also will probably be making announcements. Again, I'll get to the committee in a moment, but we're going to be recruiting for committee members, hopefully, so we'll need to tell them what this committee is going to do, what a general plan is, so they know what they're getting themselves into. Something that we would like to keep optional and not commit to is social media. Goodyear has just entered Facebook and Twitter. It's brand new, so I don't want to commit to it just because it's so brand new. Social media changes so fast. I mean, who knows what it's going to look like a year from now or 2 years from now. It could be something totally different. So I think we want to use it, but maybe that's one of those back pocket items.
Question about the website. Will there be an opportunity for people to provide input via the website, some kind of contact us or comment here and submit, or so that if there's not a social network, there's still an opportunity for people who may find it impossible or inconvenient to attend a public meeting, but still might want to provide input?
Thank you. That's a great suggestion. We're definitely going to be able to have contact information, so a link to email, all of our contact information so they call us. We are looking into options. There are softwares out there that provide commenting ability on a website, but they do have money associated with them. They do have a cost of maintaining them with them. So we're looking into that. We're hoping we're going to have a great way that people can almost have a social media discussion on our website. We're not sure if it's going to happen because, again, it's brand new. We're not sure, but I think that's a great...
Even a blog site might be something to consider.
Thank you. Okay, so going on to the next phase, the visioning, and this is the part where I see as kind of the beginning of the project. So this is one of our big pushes for public participation, one of the more important times. And I'm going to get into even more detail in just a moment, but we do recommend forming an ad hoc committee to oversee the entire general plan process, and that would commence in September 2012. We also recommend that at the very beginning, September, October, we would hold a citywide open house. We like the open house style, so again, people can come at a time that's convenient to them. They can stay 5 minutes if that's all they have. They can stay longer if they have more to say. And the purpose of that meeting would be just that general, what do you like about Goodyear? Where do you think some of our problems are? What do you like about areas elsewhere that you think we should look into? Just those real broad, general ideas. After that, we'd then like to...
Mr. Chairman, I was thinking about this. It's worth exploring having 2 citywide open houses or 2 meetings, because we really have, this north area and the south area, and I want to make sure we include the folks that are down south that don't really have a direct route to get to an open house and have them feel like they're a part of the community. So if there's a way to kind of bring those folks in, and I don't know if just having an all-day open house really accomplishes that.
So you think maybe having it at the Estrella High School or the,
You know,
And then
wherever
up
a good
north.
convenient location for Mobile is. You know.
oh, Mobile, okay.
I don't know how many residents are
Forgetting.
down there, but
No,
you know,
no, that's,
if we can, you know, capture some of those folks that are down there and have them feel
Mm-hmm.
part of the community, because we're really, our direction is heading that way, and so.
yeah.
You
No,
know,
it's a good
and
point. It's
It may not
the least
necessarily be a
populated, but,
second meeting, but it could be, you know, some
okay, no, great.
eye
idea.
towards that.
No, I think that's important. So then after the open house, we would then recommend maybe having more of a town hall or workshop style meeting, something like maybe those of you who might have participated in the city center workshop, something similar to that, perhaps a Saturday, 4 or 5 hours long. It would be a greater time commitment, so less people would participate, but we could, having those people for a longer period of time, we could delve into topics in a little more depth and maybe start actually framing some of the broad goals of the general plan. Any comments? I'll go on to the committee. So in 2003, we had a committee. It was a 16-month planning process. There were 23 meetings. 21 members were appointed, and the members that I listed, that's who was appointed at the beginning. There were some changes as the committee went on, so that there were 15 residents out of the 21 members. And just for those of you who didn't realize, Chairman Locks, Councilmember Gelser were both on the committee, so they can probably tell us a lot about how that committee worked and what worked well and what could be improved upon. So we do recommend having a similar type committee. We would recommend a similar membership, 20 to 25 members, the majority of that being residents. We would like to reach out to our business community, so maybe some business representation where they wouldn't necessarily have to be a Goodyear resident, but they are still kind of part of this community. We'd also think it'd be good to extend invitations to the Arizona State Land Department, Luke Air Force Base. It'd be nice to have somebody from the school districts representing their interest, and then possibly some of our large landowners who we know they're going to be very invested in this plan. And we have it planned right now for an 18-month planning process, so 18 monthly evening meetings, probably on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night from 6:30 to 8. Well, I'd say 8 or 8:30, but Sean will laugh at me and say it'll go late into the night. But that's how we're hoping to structure it. Of course, we would want to, as much as possible, have as representation from as many neighborhoods as possible, try and represent the demographics of Goodyear as much as we can. Council did recently adopt a boards, commissions, and committee appointment process, and I have to admit that I haven't memorized the thing, so I don't know it in detail, but my understanding is that there is a 3-member selection committee, so we would put out applications to the public, anyone could apply, take those in, the selection committee would then go through those and make recommendations to council, and then council would formally appoint the committee. Even if you're not on the committee, though, the meetings would still, of course, be open to the public. So anyone could come to these meetings, make comments, make their suggestions. There would be a time, just like these meetings, open to the public. They just wouldn't be a voting member, quote unquote. And basically how we would see it is the committee would basically be advising staff on what to put into the plan, how to structure it, and then at the end the committee would basically be recommending a draft plan. That draft plan would then come to this body for the 2 public hearings, and as usual, you would recommend to council.
Mr. Chairman, I think I spoke too soon. I think this would actually be more appropriate to have maybe some of those when I spoke about the open house, I think maybe it'd be better if we have some of these meetings be part of that, satellite.
I have a question. When it says representation from all neighborhoods, so you just generally put out something, is that correct? And then some people see it and respond?
Mm-hmm.
My question is, has the representation been that broad? Because I've been in some and they have a huge number of Pebble Creekers. They just do. So my question is, perhaps you want to visit how that representation, how the message is getting out to more neighborhoods.
Thank you. That's a great point. I think that's something where we might even ask for help from this board, where we can let you know when applications are open and you can send it to the community leaders you know of in your area or people who might be interested. But yes, I think you're right that we're not going to be able to just put something in the paper. We're going to have to find a way to.
Can I make a suggestion?
Please, we want.
I would certainly tap, I would tap as many religious institutions as you could find, and there's a whole row on Saraval, but and some on Pebble Creek Parkway, but many of their members live in Goodyear, and certainly I think that they should be informed.
That's a great idea. I hadn't thought of that.
I have a comment on the committee. How your challenge is to get people who are committed, because I've been on 2 committees. I was on the committee where we did the trash and curbside recycling, and we had 9 or 11 people on the committee, and it was a very, very committed committee. But anyway, what I mean is very seldom were people absent from that meeting. And I was on the Brownfields committee, and there were like 18 people on the committee, and we might have had 3 to 5 people attend the meetings. So you gotta find a way to get people that are committed before you appoint them to the committee.
That's
Also, you have to have a dynamite facilitator, because if you have someone that doesn't know what they're doing, the committee will
Lose interest.
disintegrate.
Well, and speaking from experience, I think that we, the last group, went, I think, over and above or beyond the commitment that was originally required with our meetings, and we extended and had more meetings because, the group was very committed to getting a quality, product. I mean, certainly we had our challenges and internal disagreements, and different groups had their own agendas, and that's part of a big group like this. But I don't think we had a problem with attendance. I don't recall that ever, or even participation among the members. It was usually a spirited debate to craft something that at the end ended up pretty good. Did we not win some award for the work that we did, as I recall? So, and maybe it was a function of the time, but I'm hopeful that that folks, either if they didn't participate before, of the new 50%ers, who weren't here, to get involved. But based on my experience, Gary, you can confirm that. I see Harvey obviously, sort of nodding his head. I mean, we were a committed group and worked hard. And yes, you are correct. We worked past 8, probably every single time, just based on the momentous task that we undertook. So, I'm hopeful that will happen again. It was a consultant. I think they changed names, right, in the middle.
But it was a paid consultant.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I do want to, I'm going to continue talking about the committee, and I just wanted to walk us through an example of how we think that the committee and the public and staff would kind of work together to create the general plan. So let's just say at our open house, we have members of the public, and they may comment. We might hear the comment that, we want more parks in Goodyear, and we might hear that a few times. So staff jots that down and takes it to the committee, and we heard that residents said Goodyear wants more parks, so the committee may think that, well, that sounds reasonable to me, and so that they direct staff, why don't you research this item? So staff researches what's best practices, what are other valley cities doing, what does our parks master plan say, and staff collects all of that data and takes it back to the committee and presents it. And this is where the facilitator will be really, really important, because they're going to have all this information dumped on them, and hopefully we have a good facilitator who doesn't, lead the policy, but helps them keep them on track, helps get all these topics covered in the short amount of time we have to work with. And so then the committee would then recommend, we do recommend that there should be X amount of park acreage per 1,000 residents. And so that policy would come out and it would be part of the 60-day review. So then again, all residents get to review that. Agencies, Maricopa County Department of Parks would look at that and see, oh, what are they doing compared to us? And so that might come back and maybe the park says, you know what, we heard that Y amount of parks per residents is the new standard, and that's really what you need to do. And so that would come back to the committee, and the committee may say, you know what, that is a good idea. We heard that feedback, so we're going to change it to Y amount of parks. And so then they make a decision and adopt a plan, and that's what comes out. And then, of course, after that, once the committee's kind of done with their job, it still has the public hearings in front of this board and council, so the community still has time to get involved. But that's kind of how we see that, the committee's going to make the decisions, but staff's going to be there working, getting the research together, and of course the public, it's going to start with the public and it's going to end with the public. So back to what we were saying on, we're going to have the ad hoc committee, a couple citywide meetings at the beginning, and then some things we were looking at. Again, we were recommending this be more optional, is mail-in surveys. We do have the citywide phone survey. It was just completed, so we got a lot of good information out of that already. Plus, we hope with the citywide meetings we get a lot of information, but maybe attendance isn't as good as we thought. And so the committee says, you know what, we really want to find out more from the residents. Or maybe there was one topic that we just kind of didn't cover, and the committee says, we'd like to find out more about this one topic, and we could just do a mail-out survey about that topic. So we don't know if we'd need that or not, and it can be costly, so we wanted to keep that optional. The other thing, we might need to have more neighborhood meetings. I think maybe this is getting at what Commissioner Peters was getting at, is maybe after the citywide meetings we find that there was a certain area of the city that just didn't really come out for one reason or another, so we want to, let's go out and meet in that neighborhood, because for whatever reason they just, maybe they had some community event the same night we scheduled our meeting and they just didn't come out. So again, we thinking maybe we'd keep that optional because we don't know exactly what that would look like, where those would be needed, how many those would be needed, and that's something the committee could direct staff to do as they might see holes in the public participation. So that's what we're looking at for the visioning section. So then we get on to, we're kind of done with the broad visioning. Now we're creating the draft chapters, reviewing the chapters, looking at the land use plan. So we would continue with the ad hoc committee. They would go throughout the whole process. And then we also see using InFocus and hopefully the web to get out a lot of information. Here's this draft chapter. Let us know if you have comments. Those comments would then be taken back to the committee. For those people who don't have internet access, hopefully we can get as much brief information as we can in the InFocus, so then all the residents get that information. Optional focus groups, again, we don't know exactly what would be needed, but there might be something where the committee is talking about water resources and they say, this is just too technical of a topic for us, so why don't you start a focus group to discuss that topic for us and bring us back their recommendations. Or maybe they're saying, there's a sector of the population that we're not feeling is getting involved in the plan enough. So, maybe it's the schools. And so let's do a focus group with the schools and see how they feel about a plan. And so that might be necessary, but again, we don't know what would be needed. And we'd like to leave that up to the committee to decide what's needed. And again, maybe we need some more citywide meetings in the middle of the process. We're hoping, I would see that we might need a citywide meeting if people aren't using InFocus in the web and we're not getting a good response. Maybe those aren't the right forms to use. But maybe people are. Maybe there's lots of attendance at the committee meetings. Maybe lots of people are commenting on the web and through InFocus, so we feel we are getting a good turnout and we won't need the city meetings. Then we move on to the 60-day review, and the required portion of this is we do have to mail to stakeholders, such as, like I said, the schools, our neighboring communities. And this is one area, and we want to get them involved ahead of time, but we are required to involve our neighboring communities at this time. In fact, we were just reviewing, Avondale just mailed their draft plan to us, so we were looking at it, and we were already looking, do their roads line up with ours? I hope they do. And a lot of that, their MAG, Maricopa Association of Governments, does a lot of regional planning. So luckily, we have a lot of good regional transportation plans out there. that they've already kind of taken that step of doing the planning for the whole Phoenix metro area. So we can just, if we're doing something in conformance with that plan and our neighbor's doing something in conformance with that plan, we know we're going to match up. Some other things aren't as easy, so we might have to reach out to our neighbors earlier in the process if we see something that's going to affect them. Also, during the 60-day review, we would like to have open houses, again, where residents can come when they have time and look at the plan. I foresee that most of them are going to want to look at the land use map, find their house, see what's around it, and that's what their comments are going to focus on, and that's absolutely fine. We can also attend city events like GAIN, the movie night, the city market, and that's a great way to get to people who wouldn't normally come on their own, and they might not come to a meeting, but they'd stop at our booth at the city market, and again, probably going to be most interested in looking at the land use map and find their house, and that's fine. Some optional, we might need to meet with stakeholders, exactly if we find that there's this one topic, that, we need to figure out this alignment of this road, so let's meet with Avondale and discuss this individually, or, we haven't heard from Luke Air Force Base in a while, so let's set a meeting with them to make sure that they've reviewed the plan in detail. We also might find a great opportunity to attend local meetings, and, we don't want to commit to this because we might have to, it could be a big time commitment, but it'd be great, again, if there's certain neighborhoods that are really affected by something or we haven't heard from a lot, we might want to attend their HOA meeting if they'd invite us, or a local Rotary Club meeting, and just another way to get people to hear about the plan and comment on the plan. And then finally, we're getting to the public hearing portion, and we would like to start with work session kind of like this, starting with the plan and work session. So hopefully we get a lot of the public comments out and a lot of the concerns in work session, so that when we get to public hearing, we're minimizing the amount of comments and the amount of rewrites we have to do. Optional is we could do a mailer to each household. This is something we did last time. I'm keeping it optional because it's quite expensive, but last time we did do a nice mailer. It had the land use plan in it, and then the goals listed and the dates of the public hearing so that everyone could see exactly what was going on. Again, at this time, it might be appropriate to meet with individual stakeholders or attend local meetings to get the word out. And then finally, after the plan is adopted and we're doing the marketing before ratification, this would be a great time to attend city events and get the word out. At that time, we'll have a proposition number and vote yes on Proposition X. Last time we did an expanded and focus, again, where we just had a lot of information about the general plan. That's a good way to get out information. And we are required to do a ballot notification. That's kind of that black and white thing you get in the mail where it tells you about each proposition and it has the arguments for and against. That'll be included, but it's the in focus will be prettier and a little easier to read. Again, optional, we could do a mailer to each household with a little postcard, vote yes on the proposition. We want to keep it optional because, again, that's a big expense. It also might be good to meet with community groups and get the word out about voting yes on the proposition.
Mr. Chairman, are we allowed to, under state law, to spend taxpayer dollars to push the ballot question in one favor or the other? I know that the state ballot and the state ballot questions, there's prohibition against taxpayer dollars going in support or opposition to that question. I don't know how if it's similar.
I think you'd probably be limited to just advertising that it's happening,
Oh,
Right.
And we don't,
well then
not advertising that you should go vote for it.
right. Yeah,
But
there's no
just that it's out there and it is on the ballot and
Okay.
you should participate.
I apologize. I misspoke then. Thank you.
I needed clarification. So I wasn't sure if there's different rules.
No vote yes postcard. I'll hit that.
just enthusiastic.
Saved you some money.
Yeah.
There may be individual organizations out
Right.
there that may want to take something like that on if they see fit, but it would not be city sponsored.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
just for your information, in 2003, we had about an 80% approval on the ratification of the general plan. So that's pretty good. That's without any advertising.
That's good. Ms. probably speaks to the effectiveness of the public involvement over the and the hard work that Chairman Locks and Councilmember Gelser put in.
When we bothered to show up.
And then, as I kind of said before, after ratification, we move on to implementation, and public participation doesn't stop there. But during the creation of the plan is when we decide what kind of participation we want in the implementation of the plan. And so that concludes that portion of my presentation. So again, I know you guys have been discussing as we go through, but we'd love to hear more ideas. And we're going to council on Monday. So if you do think of additional ideas that maybe you think about it later tonight, and you know, some city did this awesome thing, and you know, you need to know about it, then.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I'd have thought about potential committee members for this thing as well. I don't know if anybody would have an interest, but someone that is a professional planner, a land use planner, that could really give some input as to why, instead of just doing arbitrary lines on this general plan, having one or two or however many members, that actually, if you could get someone to volunteer for it, but someone that's a professional in it, I think that would be a good contribution as well.
We can try our best. It's a great idea. It's, yeah. I know there's some professional planners who don't work for the city who live in our city, so we might be able to, or developers who might be able to recruit them.
That might be good.
Or did you have someone specific in mind?
No.
Or- No, oh, okay.
Just a general question.
Trying to get more expert opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we mail out gas, not gas, but sewer and water bills, or is it all online? I know I don't pay it. My wife is responsible for that one, but
We do mail out water bills. Those only go to residents south of I-10, but do the north of I-10 get a
Trash bill.
Trash bill? Okay.
so I mean, there's an opportunity there to save some cost in mailing, is to include
Bill stuff.
informational notices and those.
Problem with that is people like me get it, but the bill's paid automatically, and so I just recycle the envelope when I get it, and I don't open it.
Some people still pay
That's true.
the old method. So.
You got to check on the city. Make sure they billed you right.
Who knows, there might be money in there.
Yeah.
You might have overpaid.
Exactly. Refund.
You're bursting my bubble. I'm trying to get him to open the envelope. Well, I mean, you know, I've got some comments as far as the committee and kind of how and how it went. I mean, obviously, the end result was good. I think that you know, as I mentioned, I think a lot of the process was dominated, at least early on, by a certain segment, and I think I certainly don't want to call them out because, you know, they certainly came to every meeting. They worked hard. Obviously, they had a vested interest in getting the plan to go their way. But I think as what I've noticed going from that commission to this commission, especially now as chairman, I see the city changing based on what this particular segment wanted at the time, but didn't really plan for. And certainly the economics of today and over the last 4 years have kind of run counter to how they were in 2003. But perhaps we need to take a look at all segments and hopefully with the work that we did back then, we may need more citizen participation as opposed to paid participation. And Gary, we're kind of in a work session. I don't know if this violates protocol or what, but I mean, I feel you could feel free to chime in here because you were there as much as I was, and
For the record, Gary Gelser. I worked on the general plan, and as Sean said, I actually made 21 out of the 23 meetings, and some of them went till 11, 12 o'clock at night. Sean has a very good point on there were some issues, and there were some people who are trying to drive some particular issues so that they benefited or were not hurt on certain things. I think there are a couple of things that I remember that we didn't do well, and I guess that would be the things I would remember talking about. The northwest corner of the city at the time in the previous general plan had been called the special study area and never got studied. And that was the Able land, and I can't remember who else's land it was, but it was, 300 acres. And we spent an inordinate amount of time dealing with that and the repercussions that it would have on Luke and how it would be planned and what eventually happened. And I think we reached some good compromises on that. The other issue that I remember that I thought we didn't do as good a job towards the end of as Katie alluded to, we were supposed to meet for 18 times. We wound up meeting 23 times because we weren't able to accomplish as much as fast as we wanted to. And towards the end of around meeting 18, 19 or so, if I remember correctly, the owner of Australia Mountain Ranch came in with a new revised plan on what they wanted to do in their southern area that hadn't been planned at all or had a plan from maybe 20 years ago. And to a certain extent, we knew this was not going to develop in the next 10 years, and so we sort of allowed that to take place. And as a result, I think you all have seen general plan amendments, major amendments that have taken place as the new owners of this area have looked at how they want to develop their land in a different way based on different market conditions. And when I look back at that process, I feel like we got rushed. We got rushed a little bit at the end because, again, the process had really started to drag out, and people wanted to. We were under a timeline and a time pressure. But going back to what Commissioner Williams' concern was, for the most part, I would say 60, 70% of the people who were originally on the committee made it through the 21 month period and showed up for a majority of the meetings. So I think the selection of the committee members, one of the things they looked at for was, are you going to be dedicated? We don't want to point somebody to this committee who just wants to be on the committee because it's a great, let me hang my hat. This was a working committee, and I think everybody, there were some people who dropped out very quickly and were replaced because they found out that the commitment was going to be way too difficult or time-consuming. That's probably and they gave you, the city had money and they gave us a really nice golf shirt at the end of the whole thing.
Mr. Chairman, when you guys mentioned paid people that were participating, are we talking about people that happen to be constituents or not constituent citizens that got appointed, or are we talking about people that come to meetings and weigh in and that's their job to weigh in?
There were some landowners who were there in a professional fiduciary. They had a fiduciary interest in how this plan was going to develop. It was way more than looking at the greater good of the citizens and the city of Goodyear. They had their agenda and they were pounding it at us, and they shall remain nameless.
They were members of the public. They weren't voting members of the
they were voting members.
No, there was
they were voting
one.
members.
There were I think one or two people, but
it was a partnership, and so one month we get one of those guys, and the other month we get somebody else, and they would just, it seemed like a tag team forever.
Right.
Am I-
And certainly that segment of the population, and I know that Harvey and Joe know what segment we're talking about,
Right.
needs to be represented.
Yes.
But, absolutely they do. However, just based on, and maybe it was just personalities, but, greater care needs to be, in that selection of those who would represent that.
That
sort of
that
stakeholder
segment,
group.
that's,
Did you make decisions by consensus or vote?
vote, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
And there were some pretty contentious,
I bet they were.
there were some contentious votes that were decided by one or two. It was still a majority vote. But even after the decisions were made, I think everybody wanted this to be a really good plan, and everybody was pushing the plan to go forward, so that even though they may have disagreed with how this decision got there, or even the results of that decision, on an overall basis, this is a positive plan. We want to push this to the citizens, and the result was, as Harvey said, in the election, it was a pretty resounding majority. There were there's always naysayers going.
I think, and
Am I
please
done?
tell me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but I think Commissioner Schlosser's idea was that there should be some expertise on the committee, so that if the committee seems to be drifting one way, somebody, excuse me, with professional experience can say, well, these are the alternatives, and these are the ramifications of this alternative, and this alternative, and this alternative. So there's some kind of professional guidance, and
in the voting membership, there was some of the representatives had professional experience. Either they were current or had worked in this business before, and the public. So out of the 21 members of the committee, there were 4 or 5 who had professional planning credentials that belong, and they were stakeholders, and they represented certain segments. And then the people, or the neighborhood representatives, there was a fair amount of what I would call ad hoc experience in planning, or had done this before somewhere else. So you're not getting the selection, the criteria for the selection, and the selection gets narrowed, but they're looking for both geographic representation, demographic representation, and technical expertise, or at least some interest in the planning process. Is if I remember correctly, how the committee was.
And not only that, but again, you've got the consultant who, would provide, or did provide that when, if there were questions about that, plus city staff was there to also, provide guidance on, specific alternatives, or, why this must be so, or, what options or alternatives, were presented. It wasn't a group of complete neophytes. I don't think. Just me.
Yeah, I would think if I was a member of that committee, I'd be more comfortable trusting a neutral staff and a neutral facilitator than another, the word of some other voting member to provide that expertise on my behalf.
But there was.
In addition to the comments that the public is making and all that, I'm saying, for some of the fact stuff of why we can't do this over that, and
Well, that's why sometimes having an outside facilitator takes the burden off staff to manage the meeting, and takes the burden off the committee, because the facilitator has the ability to say, okay, we've had enough discussion on that, we're gonna take that back, reformulate it, and then we're gonna come to you next meeting and get a vote, and it's done. And so I would strongly, I think our staff can do a lot of the work, but I would hope that a more professional facilitator or somebody external to the city might be a good, just a leader of the whole process. They don't have to do the work. It's not like we want to hire a consultant to do the work and spend as much money as we spent the last time doing it. But that leadership, that ability to make the meeting happen, may be a good way to go.
Mr. Chairman, I guess to expand on my suggestion, it wasn't necessarily a stakeholder, but more, with all due respect, there's a lot of planner geeks out there.
Right.
They just like getting into the nuts and bolts of things. And
I'm not sure we would turn those people away. We
And-
wouldn't discriminate based on planning
the
geekdom.
one situation that comes to mind, it was 2 or 3 years ago, we had the meeting down at the Estrella High School, and we had the transportation meeting. And there was people that were all upset about the Hacienda Freeway. I think my comment at the time was, there were some people there that owned 5 acres of desert that was way out in the middle of nowhere.
I remember that.
And there was an arbitrary line, nothing but an arbitrary line, placed over the top of their property. And my comment was, we're not going to see the Hacienda Freeway in our lifetimes. Don't worry about it. But I think the way the commission, if I remember right, acted, they actually, as one of the stipulations, moved the line around the 5 acres. And that's fine to do that, but the reason for my suggestion is having someone, if we could find someone that would volunteer that much time, that maybe is professionally planned stuff all around the city in different municipalities. I don't know if there is such a person that wants to donate that much time, maybe, but someone that can keep it real, so to speak, when there are arbitrary lines, because it's frustrating that you're planning for 10 years, and yet part of what is going to be planned isn't going to have a production house on it for 50 years, literally, or more.
Well, I think that goes back to what I was saying, Luke, was that a good facilitator is the facilitator doesn't have to be an expert in planning. They have to be an expert in managing a meeting, and being able to know when an issue has been, beaten to death, and then you can move forward with that. And that would be, that would be my, if we're going to go outside for some expertise, or that would be, because that also allows staff to work as a technical expert to us, and not have to get caught up in the agenda and who's winning this battle or who's winning that battle. That's one of the reasons why you may want to have an outside facilitator just run your meetings. They don't have to do the planning, and staff and the college graduate students can do the work. But,
Mr. Chairman, Katie, do you know how much the consultant cost last time around?
In 2003 dollars.
230,000. I think it was in the $230,000
That was probably
range.
based off of the 5 components that are
It was
required
more than
then,
that.
so the scope of work could be.
Was it-
It was
bigger.
more than that.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that,
We had some change.
Yeah, it was probably around 300,000. I have no more comments. Is there-
Okay, well, we're going to reformulate that
Okay.
and bring them.
That's $10,000.
So it's a good thing the city's getting a windfall in state shared revenue over the next few years.
I do want to make the point, kind of as to what you're discussing, that there will, we want to set these meetings up, at least while we're doing the plan creation, chapter review, so that we're talking about certain topics on certain nights. So one night we might be talking about circulation, and that way we can have our transportation engineers there. and the people who work on our roads there. And we can let McDOT know that we're talking about this. Who knows if they'll show up, since it's an evening meeting. But, hopefully we could be prepared to have the expertise there at the table for the topic we're going to discuss that night, so that they're, when we talk about staff, it's not just the planning staff, but all the staff at the city who have the expertise in their fields. And then we do hope the facilitators, part of it, I think, is going to be educating the committee on what the general plan is, because it is a general plan. There is kind of a plus or minus to it. We don't get so detailed as it can't move a foot later. So hopefully we can educate the committee, and the facilitator can keep them on track, and the professional staff, not even just city staff, can jump in there with suggestions.
Just comment. That was a good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good.
And
You have your work cut out for you.
We're excited, and I should have said before, but, we do expect this committee to be highly involved. We don't expect you to be at the meetings necessarily, but we will be bringing monthly reports to you to let you know. We'll be letting you guys know about city meetings that are upcoming. When we have draft chapters available, we'll be letting you know those are available on the website, so that that you guys already have a strong time commitment with this group, but that you can get as involved in the general plan as you want to, and be informed along the way, so that the public hearing isn't the first time you're seeing the plan.
I have one more question that may be premature and may even not be appropriate, but would one aspect of the general plan, would the committee look at what really is the right thing to do with the Sonoran Desert Amaranth area, and would one alternative that's looked at be how do we de-annex and cut our losses? Am I not supposed to say that?
I'll pass that one on to the big guys.
Maybe a short study.
That'll be a real short study, yeah, that's what Joe said.
I think that the first half is yes. And answer the first half of your question, I think certainly that the commission could, sort of plan, or the committee could decide the vision for that part of the city. But as far as the second piece,
I don't think you can de-annex an area unless someone else is willing to annex that area into their city,
Yeah.
if that's correct. So we can't just.
Glendale just fired.
But
Well, you gave some numbers earlier. The city is 65,000 and 191 square miles. How much of that population in square miles is in the southern section of the
there's
city?
81 people in Mobile.
And how many square miles?
90? We annexed 67 square miles in
Yeah.
the area. I think the planning area is around 90.
Thank you very much.
What framing category is that, 1 unit per square mile?
Okay, thank you.
all right, thanks, Katie. Harvey, Joe, you guys have anything else?
Just a couple of things. Karen Keith has resigned. She's relocating to California. We've advertised for the opening on the Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as the Board of Adjustment. So if you know of anybody who wants to apply, then get the word out. Applications are being accepted until January 31st and need to be submitted to the clerk's office. Also, I've included a copy of the rules and of procedure for the Planning Commission in your packet. Joe and I were looking at some of them that need to be changed based upon the council's newly adopted procedures for appointments to boards and commissions. One must be a registered voter, a minimum of a year residency, some other things that need to be included in the rules of procedure. So I think the street address also is wrong for the Justice Facility because it had the old address. The other, if you have any suggested changes, if you could let me know, we'll put those on the agenda for next for your February meeting for action. If you have any. The other
Mr.
thing that you might-
Chairman, are you looking for suggested changes now or before?
Sure.
Okay. I'd look at a way of addressing this. Shall hold a meeting once a month, considering the last 2 months, and You already have, okay, great.
One other question, I don't know if I think I may have brought this up previously, but the time at 7 o'clock, that's not really in the rules of procedure, but if you'd like to revisit what time of the evening we meet, if you want to meet earlier.
1 p.m.
I think it may be worth revisiting, but I wouldn't put it in the rules and procedure. I'd leave it up to each body.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We may, decide that. I don't know if, we want to, if you guys want to take that thought and maybe we can, decide next week if we want to meet half hour earlier, an hour earlier, depending.
Well, isn't a factor on that, though, what's right for the public to encourage public participation?
Yeah, but the city council meets at 5, so. 6. Pushed it back now?
That's all, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
All right, well, if there's nothing else before the commission, we are adjourned.
City council meeting early. So it actually speaks to
What's
your
that?
point. Yeah. Me? I've never had that much of an issue.